Hello, and please allow me the moment to reintroduce myself. I'm Kindra Hall, now the Chief Storytelling Officer at Success. And while that title is brand new, the announcement is actually a decade in the making. Let me explain. In 2010, I was driving home from work and needed to run a quick errand on the way. As I was driving, I listened to an interview on the old Success CD. You longtime subscribers will remember those, right back before the days of a podcast, with Donny Deutsch. Now, the interviewer asked Donny if he had any strategies for people to find a career that aligned with their passion. I pulled into the parking space, and even though I was running late, I couldn't get out of the car. I was hanging on every word. Donny's advice for finding your passion: think back to a thing you loved doing as a kid. There, sitting in my car, I immediately thought of storytelling, of telling and teaching stories in elementary school, teaching them at church, at summer Bible school, my friends' sisters' birthday parties, telling stories at festivals, writing stories on MySpace. Yes, I am MySpace old. And seeing the reactions I would get. Stories. I've always loved stories. Maybe that's what I should do, Donny Deutsch. Now, with one simple suggestion, success changed my life. I quit my job and began the challenging, exhausting, thrilling work of pursuing my passion for stories. That journey has included online courses, original research, live workshops, the best-selling book, Stories That Stick, and traveling the country as a keynote speaker. In the years leading up to 2020, I would speak 55 to 65 times a year for organizations and events ranging from 500 to 20,000 people about the power of storytelling in business. I flew so much. I had top status on 2 different airlines. Like TSA agents greeted me like I was an old friend, and hotels knew me by name. And then in March 2020, well, you know what happened. For me personally, the pandemic was professionally devastating. This was supposed to be my biggest year yet in both revenue and impact. My calendar was packed with events which I would speak before tens of thousands of people, only to be wiped clean in a matter of 10 days. That was something Donny didn't mention in his interview. Just how challenging it can be to follow your passion. I'll never forget the late night in mid-April when the reality truly set in. The things I had spent most of my time doing up until that point, traveling, speaking on stages, traveling some more, were no longer possible indefinitely. A business I had spent years creating dried up almost completely. Right there in our New York City apartment, the kids in bed, my husband Michael had fallen asleep on the couch. I asked aloud to the universe, who should I become during this time? Stages are dark and audiences can't gather. How can I grow, expand, and learn? Should I go back to school? Should I pursue a new aspect of business? Should I learn how to become a musical performer? I don't know. 10 years from now, what do I want my pandemic story to be? The next morning, the phone rang. It was the team at Success calling with the offer to come aboard in the expanded role of Chief Storytelling Officer. Even more suddenly than the pandemic itself, I had my answer. It couldn't have been more perfect timing. So, what does a Chief Storytelling Officer do? That is a fair question. Beyond my work and research about the power of storytelling in both business and in life, I can't help but to think about my own journey to success and the stories of the people who had gone before me. Their willingness to share their stories, the good, the bad, and the ugly, lifted me in times of struggle, made me feel normal when things were hard, and kept me motivated when I heard of their triumphs. As Chief Storytelling Officer, I will be seeking and sharing these kinds of stories in articles, trainings, and through the Success Stories with Kindra Hall podcast. It's available right now. Please give it a listen and subscribe. My first assignment after accepting the role was the cover story of this issue, September-October, a special edition for the whole team. For the story, I interviewed the 10 dynamic women you'll read about in this issue, including, to the amazement of my budding ballerina daughter, the fabulous Misty Copeland herself. Each of these women has achieved extraordinary levels of success in their respective fields. And in our conversations, they shared specific moments along their journeys. These are stories you might not have heard before, stories I hope that will stick with you and that will shape the way you imagine your own success. A lot has happened in the 10 years since I listened to that Donny Deutsch interview about pursuing your passion. Ironically, a few months before the pandemic, as my husband Michael and I were strolling through the neighborhood, Donny passed us on the sidewalk. I didn't recognize him at first, but when I did, I chased him down the block to thank him and tell him the story of how he and success changed my life, changed my story. That is my hope for this new role, to share with you the stories, big and small, of which success is truly made. And I can't wait to someday hear the success stories you'll tell.